Wow, that was quick. Hey, Christian here, founder of Second Life Coaching and the host of the 21st Century Men podcast, um, where we help men cure their emotional constipation, take their lives from stifling to stimulating, and help them remember who they once were so they can be that man again. So today we're continuing. I'm sitting here in my living room here in Orlando. It's kind of cold and getting colder and cloudy outside. So we are in the second installment in a brand new series that we're starting called What Men Really Want. And we're doing this via video, and video is also being transcribed for the podcast. So if you don't catch the video, you can always catch it on the podcast. And today we're going to talk about what men really want. And that is, today's episode is about to feel safe. Now, there is plenty of advice out there to guys like you and me about how to make our partners, our wives, our girlfriends feel safe. And it's a very, very important thing to do because that safety breeds intimacy. But there's far less about how to make your man feel safe. You see, we're kind of ingrained that things like vulnerability and showing emotion and opening up are not what makes a man a man. It tends to be more of, something that's poked fun of, the sensitive guy, that sort of thing that is just really kind of a running punchline, particularly in society, in media, and whatever. We're supposed to be the strong, stoic, can handle everything, put the weight of the world on our shoulders kind of guy, but we're also expected to be open and honest and vulnerable and be able to share our emotions with our partners. And it's a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult balance to find for us guys because we're so ingrained and so used to being told that being emotional and being, vulnerable is not manly, that doing so, we kind of doubt who we are and we begin to question our own masculinity and our own manhood. And so we tend to shy away from doing that sort of thing. And then so when we find somebody who makes it easy to be vulnerable with, easy to open up with, who makes us feel safe, a lot of times it's easy to just kind of emotionally everywhere because we don't have that outlet. We're taught to shove our stuff deep down inside. We're taught to rub some dirt on it, get up, walk it off, kind of a thing. And what it makes it extraordinarily difficult for us guys to be vulnerable. And I know, it's not all, but there are a lot of women out there who want their man to be vulnerable and emotional and be able to share and be open. But at the same time, only a little bit. Only a skosh, only some, in just a very small amount, just kind of to show that they have the capability. And then it's like, oh my God, would you just stop and suck it up and be a man and be strong? Or it's, I can't deal with you needing my strength right now because I need you to be strong for me. And so we shove those things down inside and we just bury all that and we become emotionally constipated. It probably starts when we run into the teen years. It's easy when we're younger to be more open and honest because that's the kind of friendships we have. I mean, I remember friends that I had when I was in elementary school. We shared everything. I mean, we'd go out and play, we'd have fun, we'd laugh, we'd share, it was just kind of like the most freeing it can be. And it is usually for most men, their entire lives are those relationships right up until you start junior high. And then junior high, the whole competitiveness comes in and the societal, the cultural norms tend to start to focus in and get harder to, they kind of beat into you. And so we get that the period of junior high and high school, we lose a lot of that openness and vulnerability that we have in elementary school simply because of the way the world is. And so when it comes to relationships, it's very difficult for a guy to be open and honest and feel safe, because that's just kind of what we're taught doesn't happen. That's kind of, that's not what guys do. And so we go through our lives and we repress these emotions, and it comes out in anger. It comes out in stress. We dive into things like work and other sort of sedative kind of things that we do, and we forget how to process that sort of those emotions and express them in an open and honest and constructive way. And so when those emotions build up to a point where they've got to be released, like a pressure cooker that's been on for far too long, that relief valve will blow. And that's when you usually get things like, you get anger, you get frustration, you get, in some of the worst cases, you actually get violence, from, by men. That's why a lot of what you see today, particularly in shooting incidents across, especially the United States, one of the common threads is the shooter, the guy had a history of domestic violence because he's forgotten or never learned how to process those emotions in a safe and constructive way, because he hasn't been made to feel safe in order to do so. So it's extraordinarily important, cheers, for your guy to feel safe. Now, how can you do that? How can you help your guy feel safe in order to be himself? There's lots of simple ways to do so. Things, we talked about it kind of a little bit in the last video about appreciation. By appreciating those things that he does around the house and he does, for you, to show you that he loves you and he cares about you, without going to, I thought you would have, or laying out an expectation, saying, that's great, but I wish you would have X, Y, or Z. There are ways to phrase that desire that you may have in ways that are constructive and not kind of destructive to how your guy feels. Gratitude and appreciation go a long way. In the next video, we're going to talk a lot about respect, and not in a respect your authority, respect my authority, or Cartman kind of way, but for his ability to provide and be a protector and be a leader, and the decision, and be a decisive guy, and that sort of thing. And that's one way that you can help him feel safe, by not essentially emasculating him, by poking fun at his job, by questioning the decisions that he makes, by giving kind of that backhanded compliment about the things he does. That's great, or not, that sort of thing. Allow him to be appreciated and respected. Another way, and a very important way, is to hear what he has to say. Even if it's kind of painful to listen to. It's hard enough for us men to express ourselves, and being able to do so takes a lot of courage. We tend to avoid a lot of the more difficult conversations because we don't want the conflict. We don't want the fights and the stress that goes along with it. And so we kind of just hide all that thing, and we'll throw out little feelers every once in a while about things that we're feeling whether we're feeling disrespected or feeling unappreciated or not listened to. And so we'll throw those things out. And because they're unexpected, and because it's so relatively unusual for guys to do so, our girlfriends and wives and partners and spouses tend to get a little bit defensive about what we're saying. And I will grant you that us men are not don't say things in the most graceful way most of the times. It's difficult because we don't know how to express our emotions. We don't know how to say things the way. And so sometimes it really comes out kind of clumsy and sloppy. It just does. And being able to express those things and send out those feelers and those little those kind of, scouts, I guess you could say, in order to kind of see what the response is going to be, is our way of trying to be open and vulnerable. And so learning to listen to what your guy has to say, and this goes both ways, by the way. I'm fully aware of that a lot of you guys out there, and I've done it too, that when our partners say something that isn't necessarily is difficult for us to hear, we tend to get defensive. So learning to listen to what your partner has to say without getting defensive is a huge way. It is probably the number one way to help them feel safe, and it's vital. If you want a relationship that's got a really strong, solid foundation, that's open and honest, and really has a chance to grow into something, then it's very, very important that you learn to listen to what they have to say without getting defensive. And when you do that, when you listen to what your guy has to say, even though it's something you don't want to hear, or you're not, that's painful to hear, without getting defensive or attacking him or getting a yeah but, or going for the tit for tat kind of thing, it makes him feel safer to be able to share more about what's going on inside of him. And the more your man is able to share what's going on inside of him, the better your relationship will be, the more intimate it will be, the more freeing it'll be, because he feels that he can be who he really is around you, and the confidence that comes with that. And you'll see it in the way he carries himself, and the way he cares for you. It's very the ability to reciprocate, and his reciprocation of your helping him feel safe. He will double down on helping you feel safe, because we as men have very few people who make us feel safe enough to express our innermost fears and our dreams and everything else. I mean, there's a statistic that just went around that 45% of men, by the time they reach my age, by the time they reach 40, have no good friends, nobody that they can be, no male friends that they can be open and honest with. And so what you end up with is a lot of guys who are settling in their marriages, who are settling in their jobs, who are just kind of going through the motions, and really kind of not being themselves, because they don't have a safe and secure outlet to express themselves. So they just kind of mold themselves into what they're expected to be. And you end up with a bunch of mindless drones, and you end up with a bunch of people who are going, well, why can't my husband be more like, why can't you be more like? It's because we don't feel safe. We haven't been able to, and we don't have anybody to confide into, and so little things like that, little things like being defensive, or getting into the whataboutism, or playing the tit for tat game. Oh, excuse me. When your guy opens up to you and sends out the feelers, if I want to drink a white wine spritzer in the middle of a Saturday afternoon, then by God, I'm gonna. Because sometimes you gotta have something fruity, not quite so beery. Being appreciative without make the appreciation segments more. I mean, it's okay to talk to your man about what you would like to see him do. I mean, we all want to be loved in the way that we want to be loved, that makes us feel safe and secure. And it's okay, and it's it's freaking right to express that to your partner. But doing so, you got to do it constructively, in a way that he knows that you appreciate what he's doing, that, excuse me, oh, blah, that that he knows that you notice that he's doing those things, that he appreciates you. So make the appreciative things a little bit more segments a little bit longer, and the I wish you would's a little bit shorter, and don't even say it in a way in an I wish you would kind of a way. Say, you know, I would appreciate things like, the things that make me feel safe are, the things that make me feel loved are, because to be honest, guys love a list. We love a formula. You let us know, you know, that you appreciate what we're doing now, along with, there are things like, that also make me feel loved and appreciated. We'll run with that. When you make us feel like we're not doing enough, when you make your guy feel like he's not doing enough and he can never do enough, which is the whole point behind the "that's great, but" statements, then his thoughts start going like, well, why bother? I'm doing these things. I care about this person. I love this person. I'm showing them in one of the best ways that I know how that I do, but it's not enough. So why bother? And then what that does is it damages your relationship, and it makes it harder for your guy to be open and honest with you. It doesn't make him feel safe. And then you'll notice when he starts clamming up, when he starts turtling and pulling aside, and he's got all this stuff going on in his head, and he's no longer sharing it with you. And you wonder, well, why doesn't he do that? It's partly because of the lack of safety that he feels, the lack of appreciation that he feels for what he's already doing. These sorts of things are very important. I can tell you on a personal level, it's one of the greatest struggles that uh, I've had in, especially in recent times. And it's only been recently that I've thrown caution to the wind and actually vocalized a lot of the things that I had been saying. And it was, they've been very, very difficult conversations to have. There's been a lot of frustration, a lot of tears, a lot of silence, a lot of, um, just a lot of tension over this. But it's important that whether or not, um, a relationship is going to go the distance or not, or marriage is going to go to the distance or not, it's important to have those conversations, because a lot of times we all get these things stuck in our heads and we play out scenarios, um, basically that we make up in our own imaginations, and it's not fair to either party to have these imaginary arguments in the back of your head, these discussions in the back of your head, and not bring the other person into it, because you're just imposing what you think, how you think they would respond, you know, on them, without giving them the chance to, you know, understand where you're coming from, and really kind of hear your, your side, your feelings, your deep emotional vulnerability about things. And whether or not things go the distance, whether or not something ends, in my shirt keeps getting bunched up here as I'm sitting on the couch, having that conversation is a very important thing. And if there is no feeling of safety for the guy, either party, then those conversations can't happen, or they happen and they're completely non-constructive. And it's just going to end up with anger and frustration and shouting and tears everywhere, and without any sort of meaningful resolution one way or the other. And so I'm kind of gotten a little bit off track here, but sometimes that happens here on the show. And uh, all we want, one of the things that we really want as men is to feel safe. And it's important for us to feel safe. because we really don't have anywhere to be so. You know, we don't have anywhere to feel safe. We look for validation, we look for respect, and if in our relationships we don't feel safe, or we don't feel heard, or we don't feel listened to, then the relationship's in danger, and it can lead to really bad consequences. Most guys will suffer silently for a long time, um, because that's what we're ingrained to do. It's in our cultural DNA as men to suffer silently for years, kind of shoving aside exactly what you know we need in order to maintain the peace and you know be seen as a man. And that's why one of the reasons why so many of us end up in their 40s, going through a midlife crisis, whether it's the hedonistic, nuke your old life kind of one, or the existential, who am I and how the fuck did I get here kind. By the time we reach this age, after decades of not having a place to be safe and be emotionally vulnerable with, a lot of us end up, depressed or anxious or with health problems, the stress and the anxiety, and we end up with, um, you know, settling in, kind of humdrum relationships, um, humdrum jobs, and you know that just it's got to end. You know, it's got this fake idea of what it takes to be a man has got to end. And so, to get a little bit back on track here, listen to him. Give don't smother him. Give him space. Let him come to you. Let him express things the best way he knows how, because odds are, he's forgotten how to be tactful when discussing how he feels a long time ago, and it's going to take some time for him to learn it. So give him the safety, give him the cushion, give him the space to learn how to navigate being open and honest and vulnerable again. And I promise you, you'll see a different man the more you do. So that's it for today. That's it for this show. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If it helps you, if someone needs to hear this thing about guys needing to be safe, to feel safe, please share it with them. As always, check out the podcast on iTunes, on Google Play Music, 21st Century Man, or you can come and visit us on the web at secondlifecoaching.com. And until next time, folks, peace.